Göbekli Tepe turned out to be what you think it might have been, where are the metal tools? Where are the writing, the examples of writing?
Göbekli Tepe is one of the most mysterious and mind-blowing places ever discovered on Earth. Hidden in the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey, this ancient site sat unnoticed for thousands of years. In Turkish, Göbekli Tepe means potbelly, hill, and from the outside it looked just like that, a simple mound of earth and stone. But underneath that hill was something unbelievable, a structure built over 11,000 years ago. Long before the pyramids of Egypt, before Stonehenge, and even before humans were thought to know how to farm. It was only in the 1990s when a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt decided to dig deeper. What he found shocked the world. Beneath the surface were massive stone pillars arranged in circles. These stones were up to 20 feet tall and weighed as much as 10 tons. Even more surprising, they were carved with animals, symbols, and strange human-like figures. There were snakes, foxes, vultures, and scorpions etched into the stone, creatures that might have held spiritual meanings for the people who made them. What made this discovery even stranger was that there were no signs of houses, farms, or tools. These people didn't seem to live at the site, and yet they had managed to build something extremely complex. Historians and archaeologists were confused. How could a group of hunter-gatherers people who wandered around hunting animals and picking wild plants build something so big and detailed? This kind of construction usually came much later in human history, after farming began, when people could settle down and build cities. But Göbekli Tepe was built long before any of that. This raised a huge question: what if our entire understanding of human history was wrong? What if religion or spirituality came before farming? That was what Klaus Schmidt believed. He thought maybe people started gathering at sacred places like Göbekli Tepe for rituals or festivals. Then, because they stayed in one place for a while, they began farming out of necessity. This idea was the opposite of what history books had been saying for years. Normally, we think that once people learned to farm, they had enough food to settle down and build big structures. But here it looked like the desire to worship or meet together might have led to the invention of farming. If true, this flipped our entire view of how civilization began, but that wasn't the only mystery. One of the most puzzling things about Göbekli Tepe is that it was buried on purpose. Around 8000 BCE, someone or maybe many people decided to cover up the entire site. They didn't just abandon it and let nature take over. They carefully filled it with dirt and debris. This shocked archaeologists. Why would anyone bury such an important site? Was it a religious ritual? A cultural decision? Or were they trying to hide something? No one knew. And since only about 10% of the site has been uncovered, there's still so much we haven't seen. Theories began to spread. Some people believed the site was a temple, a place where people met for spiritual ceremonies. Others suggested it was a kind of calendar, a way to track stars or seasons. Then there were even wilder ideas that Göbekli Tepe was built with the help of aliens, or that it was the last trace of a lost civilization that disappeared in a great disaster. While these ideas don't have strong evidence, they captured the public's imagination. They were talked about in books, documentaries, podcasts, and even on TV shows like Ancient Aliens. Still, serious scientists kept digging, hoping to find answers. They studied the layout, the carvings, the tools nearby, and even the soil. Year after year, they kept uncovering new parts of the site. And then, in 2025, something happened that would take the mystery to a whole new level. In early 2025, archaeologists working at Göbekli Tepe made a discovery that no one saw coming. For years, experts had believed that the site was only used for ceremonies. They thought groups of people would come from far away, perform their rituals, and then leave. There was no strong proof that anyone had lived there. But during the latest digging season, a team decided to explore an area that had never been touched before. It was near the edge of the site where previous surveys hadn't shown much. What they found changed everything. As they dug, they came across signs of human living space, real ones. There were fire pits which showed people had cooked or stayed. Warm, there were storage areas, possibly used for keeping grain or supplies. Smooth, flat stones were found that may have been used as workspaces. Even the outlines of small shelters or houses appeared. This wasn't just a temporary camp, it looked like people had lived here for extended periods. This discovery caused shock and excitement in the archaeology world. It meant that the people who built Göbekli Tepe might not have been nomads after all. They could have been semi-settled, living and working right beside the temple site. That meant the idea of ritual gatherings leading to farming and settlement might be even more accurate than once believed, but the surprises didn't end there. As the digging went deeper, the team discovered a sealed chamber beneath one of the stone circles. It was hidden well, with carved stones and layers of dirt carefully placed to keep it out of sight. Inside the chamber were several strange objects. They were wrapped in what looked like old textiles, ancient cloth that had somehow survived over time. When unwrapped, the team found small carved stones with symbols that didn't match any other known carvings from Göbekli Tepe. Some of the symbols were completely new, not seen anywhere else in the region. There was also a dark, polished obelisk, a tall, narrow stone covered in unfamiliar markings. What made it even more mysterious was that this type of stone wasn't found nearby. It had to have been brought from far away. Some experts think it may have held spiritual or ceremonial meaning. Others wonder if it represented knowledge or stories passed down from a lost culture. And while much of the discovery has been shared, some of it hasn't. There are rumors that one object found in the vault was so strange it has not been shown to the public. Official statements have been vague, saying only that the artifact is being studied carefully. This secrecy has fueled more speculation. Some people believe it might be something that challenges not just history, but science itself. As news of the 2025 discovery spread, it reignited global interest in Göbekli Tepe. Journalists, scientists, and fans of ancient history started asking more questions. Could Göbekli Tepe be connected to a lost civilization that existed long before we thought humans could organize in large groups? Could the strange symbols be a forgotten language or code? Could the obelisk be a religious icon, or even a map or message from people who knew more than we do? While there are no solid answers yet, one thing is clear: the discovery has forced historians to rethink what they know. The idea that Göbekli Tepe was only a place for temporary visits no longer makes sense. People may have lived there, they may have worked there. They may have used the temple not just for rituals, but as part of their everyday life. And the fact that they later buried the site so carefully suggests they were trying to preserve or protect it for the future, maybe even for us. This is no longer just a question of who built Göbekli Tepe, but why. Why go to such great effort to create it? Why hide it? And why, after more than 10,000 years, is it still sending us messages? We don't fully understand. Now that the 2025 discovery has changed so much, the future of Göbekli Tepe is more exciting and more mysterious than ever before. Scientists and archaeologists are planning new excavations to explore the newly found living areas and see how deep the chambers go. If there are more hidden rooms or sealed spaces, there could be even more artifacts waiting to be found. Imagine if they discover writing or tools or bones or something else completely unexpected. It's possible that Göbekli Tepe holds the key to understanding how civilization truly began, not just in Turkey, but across the entire world. And yet, even as more is found, the site raises questions that no one can easily answer. Why did people from 11,000 years ago build something so massive and detailed? How did they manage to move such heavy stones without modern tools? And who taught them the skills to do all this before the invention of farming, writing, or cities? Was it all human achievement? Or did they carry knowledge passed down from an earlier, forgotten civilization that we know nothing about? These questions may sound like science fiction, but the facts on the ground at Göbekli Tepe are stranger than any story. The site continues to challenge everything we thought we knew about early humans. It shows that our ancestors were not simple, primitive people. They were creative, organized, and capable of great works. Of course, with mystery comes imagination. Fringe theorists continue to push ideas that involve aliens, lost continents, or even ancient technology. They believe Göbekli Tepe could be part of a global network of ancient power centers. Some even suggest it could be a portal or a site for cosmic energy. While most scientists don't agree with those ideas, even they admit that there is still a lot we don't know. And the truth is, sometimes legends carry small pieces of real history. So, while we wait for more solid evidence, it's okay to wonder and dream. The most important thing is that the site is being studied more closely than ever before. With new technology like ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping, archaeologists can now explore what lies beneath without damaging the site. And thanks to the global interest, there's more funding and support to uncover the secrets that have remained, buried for thousands of years. As we learn more, we may not only solve the mystery of Göbekli Tepe, but also open new chapters in the human story chapters that were never written down but carved in stone, left waiting to be found by curious minds. In the end, Göbekli Tepe is more than just a pile of rocks. It's a message from the past. It tells us that human beings have always looked to the stars, searched for meaning, and built things that outlast time itself. Whether it was a temple, a settlement, or something else entirely, its builders wanted it to last. They wanted someone to find it, and now that we have, it's up to us to listen. The 2025 discovery isn't just about new artifacts, it's about changing the way we see ourselves. Maybe we weren't as primitive as we once believed. Maybe the roots of civilization are deeper, older, and more amazing than we ever imagined. As more secrets rise from the soil, one thing is certain: Göbekli Tepe has many more stories to tell, and the journey to understand them has only just begun. Göbekli Tepe is one of the most mysterious and fascinating places ever discovered. It sits on a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey, far away from any major cities, but it holds secrets that could change everything we thought we knew about human history. For years, scientists and archaeologists believed that people only started building big structures and living in one place after they learned how to farm. They thought that once humans figured out how to grow crops and raise animals, they could settle down, build homes, form communities, and eventually develop religion, culture, and government. This story made sense for a long time. But then Göbekli Tepe was discovered, and that simple story began to fall apart. When archaeologists first began digging at Göbekli Tepe, they were shocked. They found massive stone pillars arranged in circles. These pillars were more than 16 feet tall and weighed tons. Some of them had carvings of animals, symbols, and strange shapes that looked like they meant something important, maybe even spiritual. At first, experts thought Göbekli Tepe was just a temple or a holy site. They imagined that small groups of hunter-gatherers came there every once in a while to pray or hold ceremonies before going back to their wandering lifestyle. That seemed to match what we knew about people who lived over 10,000 years ago. But then something unexpected happened. In 2025, a team of researchers made a discovery that changed the story again, and this time, it changed everything. Using new technology like ground-penetrating radar and satellite scans, the researchers found something incredible. Göbekli was much larger than anyone had realized. Beneath the surface, hidden under layers of soil and time, there were at least 15 more enclosures, huge stone circles just like the ones that had already been uncovered. Some of these might even be older than the known structures, possibly dating back 15,000 years. That's long before the invention of farming or metal tools. Most people at that time were still living in caves or wandering across plains, hunting animals and gathering wild plants. But the people at Göbekli Tepe were doing something else. They were building, they were carving, and they were organizing. The radar scans revealed more than just stones. As archaeologists continued their work, they started finding tools like stone blades, grinding stones, and scrapers. They also found the remains of plants and animals, wheatgrasses, legumes, gazelle bones, and bird feathers. These discoveries told a different story. People weren't just visiting Göbekli Tepe for a few days. They were processing food, preparing meals, and maybe even living there for extended periods. The presence of grinding stones suggests that they were turning grains into flour or porridge. This kind of activity isn't something you do on a quick stopover. It's something you do when you're planning to stay. And that's when the idea started to take shape. What if Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple? What if it was also a place where people lived together, a kind of early community? That idea shook the foundations of archaeology. If Göbekli Tepe really was a place where people lived permanently or semi-permanently, then it would mean that humans started forming communities before they learned how to farm. That turns the old timeline upside down. For decades, historians believe that agriculture came first. People grew crops, stayed in one place, and then began to build complex societies. But what if it was the other way around? What if people first came together for spiritual reasons or to feel a sense of community and only afterward figured out how to grow food to support their new way of life? The evidence from Göbekli Tepe supports this idea. The stone circles are arranged with incredible precision. Many experts believe they were aligned with the stars or with seasonal changes, showing a deep understanding of astronomy. These weren't random stones thrown together by amateurs. They were carefully placed with each circle showing symmetry, purpose, and planning. That kind of design takes leadership, communication, and teamwork. And remember, these people didn't have wheels, metal tools, or writing. They were still foragers, but they had vision. They had a reason to build, and whatever that reason was, it was strong enough to bring people together and keep them working for years, maybe even generations. As archaeologists continued to dig and uncover more of Göbekli Tepe, it became clear that this site was not just big, it was massive. The number of stone pillars found at the site has now passed 200, and more are being discovered as the research expands. Some of these new structures are still hidden underground, waiting to be unearthed. Experts estimate that less than 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been fully excavated. That means 90% is still buried, untouched by human hands for thousands of years. And the deeper they dig, the more they realize that every layer could contain something groundbreaking. Some researchers believe that it may take more than 150 years to fully uncover the entire site. Imagine that century after century, Göbekli Tepe has been holding on to its secrets, and we're only beginning to scratch the surface. But why does this matter so much? Because it changes the way we understand our past. For the longest time, we saw history as a straight line. First, we hunted and gathered, then we farmed, then we settled down. After that, we built cities, wrote laws, and developed religion. That story is neat and easy to follow. But Göbekli Tepe throws that order into question. What if we built temples before we built farms? What if our need to connect, to believe in something bigger than ourselves, came before the need to grow food? That idea is powerful because it shows that people have always looked for meaning, even when life was hard and uncertain. The discovery of so many megalithic enclosures temples made of massive stones tells us that the people of Göbekli Tepe had a purpose. They weren't just surviving. They were creating something that would last. These structures were not thrown together in a few days. They required years of work, coordination, and shared effort. To move stones that weighed tons, the people must have used wooden sleds, ropes, and manpower. They had to organize, assign tasks, and work together over long periods. This kind of cooperation suggests something we didn't expect from hunter-gatherers. It suggests that they had leaders, plans, and maybe even early forms of government. And the carvings on the stones, those mysterious animals and symbols, could be some of the earliest forms of storytelling or belief systems. Some archaeologists believe they may even be the beginnings of religion. The animals carved into the stones include foxes, snakes, boars, and birds. Some images are abstract and may represent spiritual or mythical ideas. These weren't just decorations, they had meaning. They connected the people to something greater than themselves, whether that was nature, spirits, or a shared identity. And the fact that these carvings were placed on the largest stones in the center of each circle shows how important they were to the builders. Another important part of the 2025 discovery is what it suggests about how people used the site. While some believe it was a place for year-round living, others think people returned to it seasonally. They may have gathered here for festivals, rituals, or community events. Even if they didn't stay all year, their visits were regular and meaningful, and that kind of repeated gathering could have laid the foundation for permanent settlements. When people return to the same place again and again, they start building things to make life easier. They clear land. They build shelters, they find ways to store food, and slowly a temporary camp becomes a permanent village. This pattern could explain how early communities began not because people wanted to farm, but because they wanted to come together. Farming may have come later as a way to support these new gatherings. And if that's true, then the story of civilization is not about food first. It's about people first, people with ideas, people with beliefs, people with the desire to build something lasting. Göbekli Tepe gives us a new way to think about the past. It shows us that early humans were not just simple survivors. They were planners, builders, artists, and thinkers. They didn't wait for farming to start dreaming big. They dreamed first. And then they figured out how to make those dreams real. That's what makes Göbekli Tepe so special. It's a place where we can see the very beginning of the human journey toward civilization, not as a straight line, but as a series of bold steps into the unknown. Right now, Göbekli Tepe is changing how experts look at ancient history. And, not just because of what was found in 2025, but because of what it means for all of us. This place, once thought to be just another mysterious ruin, is now seen as possibly the first page of human civilization. It shows that before there were cities, before there were kings, and before there were even farms, there was the desire to belong, to create, to leave a mark. These ancient builders might not have known it, but their efforts were the seeds of everything that followed: writing, religion, community, culture. The implications are huge. If people were gathering, building, and organizing before they learned how to grow food, then we have to rewrite our timelines. We have to rethink what it means to be human. We always believed that hunger was the first driver of progress. That once we needed more food, we invented farming and everything else followed. But Göbekli Tepe tells a different story. It suggests that it was not the stomach, but the soul that pushed us forward. The need for meaning, the desire to connect, and the urge to leave something behind may have been even more powerful than the need to eat. This changes how we understand our ancestors. It shows that they were not just reacting to the world around them, they were shaping it. They were visionaries. They looked up at the stars, carved symbols into stone, and worked together to build something that would last longer than their own lives. That kind of thinking is deeply human. It connects us across thousands of years. And that connection is what makes Göbekli Tepe so important, not just as an archaeological site, but as a story of who we are. Even today, we still search for connection, meaning, and purpose. We build places to gather, we create art, we form communities. The people of Göbekli Tepe were doing the same thing, long before anyone thought it was possible. Their story reminds us that history is not just about kings and wars and inventions. It's about people, ordinary people with extraordinary dreams. The 2025 discovery didn't just reveal more stones. It opened a new chapter in the story of humanity. It showed us that the path to civilization was not a straight road paved by farming. It was a winding trail marked by faith, community, and the courage to build. And that changes everything. So, the next time you think about where we came from, don't picture a farmer planting the first seed. Picture a group of people standing together, carving stone, looking at the stars, and building a circle that would stand for thousands of years. Picture Göbekli Tepe. Because maybe, just maybe, that's where it all began, before cities rose and kings ruled. Before farming shaped human life and tools forged the future, something extraordinary happened. On a quiet hill in what is now southeastern Turkey, a group of ancient people built something the modern world still struggles to understand. This place is Göbekli Tepe, believed by many to be the oldest known monumental structure on Earth. Long before pyramids or stone castles, these people carved and erected giant stone pillars in perfect circles. They had no metal tools, no written language, no permanent homes, and yet, they built something so grand. It challenges everything historians believed about how human civilization began. What's most shocking is the time it was built. Göbekli Tepe dates back more than 11,000 years, nearly 7,000 years before Stonehenge and even longer before the Great Pyramids. At that time, humans were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers, people who followed animals, picked wild plants, and lived in small temporary camps. But the people of Göbekli Tepe weren't just surviving, they were organizing, designing, building. They arranged massive stone pillars in detailed circles and ovals. Each pillar, some weighing as much as 10 tons, was carved with animals and symbols. Some had two shapes, and others were decorated with foxes, birds, snakes, and other creatures important to their beliefs. These weren't shelters or defensive walls. They were sacred spaces, perhaps temples, perhaps meeting grounds created for ritual ceremony, or something even more mysterious. What's even more fascinating is that there's no strong evidence of farming at Göbekli Tepe. That's right, these people were likely still living as hunter-gatherers. So how did they organize the labor and resources needed to build something so huge? Think about it. Who fed the workers? Who designed the layout? Who carved the stone and moved the pillars into place? There had to be planning, leadership, shared knowledge, and strong motivation. That leads to a big question. What came first? For decades, historians believed farming led to settlements, then to religion and temples. But Göbekli Tepe turns that idea upside down. What if it was the desire to build temples or sacred places that led to farming? If people gathered regularly to build or worship, they'd need food nearby. So they may have started planting crops to feed each other. Farming might not have been the start of civilization, but rather the result of people already coming together. This idea changes everything. It shows us that early humans weren't just reacting to nature, they were shaping it. They weren't just trying to survive, they were dreaming. They were spiritual, organized, and deeply connected. This changes how we see the human story. It suggests that people didn't simply stumble into civilization. Instead, they were already thinking ahead. They had beliefs. They had shared goals. They had a desire to create something that would last long after they were gone. In many ways, Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple. It's a message carved in stone that says, "We were here, we believed in something greater." Once we understand how important Göbekli Tepe really is, we begin to see similar echoes all around the world. This ancient site may be the oldest, but it's not alone in its mystery. If you look closely, you'll see a strange and beautiful pattern across ancient history. All over the globe, separated by oceans, deserts, and mountains, early people were building big, sacred structures out of stone. These people didn't know each other. They didn't share language or culture. And yet, they had the same idea, to build something massive and meaningful that would last forever. Let's take Stonehenge, for example. Located in the green fields of England, Stonehenge is a circle of large standing stones that dates back to around 3000 BCE, about 6,000 years after Göbekli Tepe. Still, it shares the same mystery. The stones are arranged in a circle, some aligned with the sun during solstices. We still don't know exactly why it was built, but many believe it was a sacred place used for ceremonies or astronomy. And again, like Göbekli Tepe, it required teamwork, knowledge, and shared purpose. Now travel south to the Mediterranean island of Malta. There, you'll find Göbekli, some of the oldest freestanding buildings in the world. Built around 3600 BCE, the limestone temples of Göbekli were created without metal tools and show signs of religious or ceremonial use. The structure is complex, with curved walls and carefully placed stones. These temples prove that people with supposedly primitive tools could design and build with incredible skill and purpose. Like Göbekli Tepe, these were not homes or forts. They were sacred, further west on the island of Minorca in Spain. We find the tallest T-shaped stone monuments often surrounded by smaller stones in a horseshoe shape. They were built much later, around 1000 BCE, but they show how the idea of using large stones to mark spiritual spaces never died. It evolved and appeared in different ways across different lands. Even though they came after Göbekli Tepe, the tallas still echo its shape and spirit. And then there's the mystery of the Moai statues on Easter Island, carved between 1250 and 1500 CE by the Rapa Nui people. These giant stone figures are completely unique. They have faces and personalities, some even wear stone hats. But like the other sites, they represent more than just rocks. They stand for identity, culture, and belief. They were placed in specific ways and locations, and the work needed to move them required enormous human effort and collaboration. The people of Easter Island, like those at Göbekli Tepe, built not just with stone but with heart and purpose. These examples raise a fascinating possibility. Could the basic idea of sacred stone structures have started at Göbekli Tepe and spread across the world through time, trade, or shared memory? Or did each group come to the same idea on their own? Either way, the pattern is clear. Humans everywhere wanted to build something lasting. They wanted to express their beliefs, honor their ancestors, and connect with the sky, the stars, or the gods. Even though these ancient cultures had no contact with each other, they shared something deeply human, the urge to mark their place in the world with stone, to build circles, temples, and monuments, to gather as communities, to believe. And Göbekli Tepe, being the oldest, might have been the first sign of this global human journey. Now, here comes the twist. What if Göbekli Tepe isn't the beginning? After all, what if it's not the first step, but a signpost left behind by people who were already far ahead? For years, we've called Göbekli Tepe the cradle of civilization. But new theories in 2025 suggest something far more exciting and unsettling. What if Göbekli Tepe is just the oldest site we've found, not the oldest that ever existed? Could there be older, more advanced societies buried beneath the earth, lost to time? This idea opens a door to a whole new way of thinking. Earthquakes, floods, climate change, and erosion could have wiped out earlier civilizations, leaving behind only whispers and broken stones. What if the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not pioneers but survivors? What if they were trying to preserve a way of life that had already existed elsewhere? Think of Göbekli Tepe not as the first page in our history, but the first surviving chapter of a much longer book, one where earlier pages were burned, buried, or washed away. If that's true, we may need to look again at everything we thought we knew. Perhaps civilization didn't begin in one place, at one time in one clear line. Maybe it rose and fell like waves. Maybe it began, ended, and began again over and over each time, leaving behind traces for us to find. Göbekli Tepe could be one of those traces. And there may be others waiting under jungles, deserts, oceans, and fields, waiting for someone to look a little deeper. This theory explains why people in different parts of the world, with no contact, all had similar ideas. Circles of stone, sacred geometry, gathering places, ritual spaces. It's as if these ideas were part of something we all once knew, something we lost, but not entirely. Because the past has a way of speaking, and the deeper we dig, the louder it gets. And what does it tell us? That early humans were not simple or savage. They were thinkers, dreamers, builders. They looked at the stars and wondered. They believed in something greater. They gathered, carved, designed, and built not just to survive, but to belong. To say, we were here, we believed, we mattered. So, what if everything we've uncovered at Göbekli Tepe is just the beginning of the story, not for humanity, but for us? Maybe we're not the first great civilization, just the first to survive long enough to rediscover the rest. Think about it. If these stone pillars are the echo of something even older, what else is waiting to be found? It's a haunting thought, but also a hopeful one, because it reminds us that the human spirit has always reached for something bigger. Always built, always believed. And that maybe, just maybe, The secrets of our past are still out there, waiting for the right hands to uncover them, one stone at a time.